Are you ready, David?
I am ready. Okay. I am ready.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to episode 392 of the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs, and joining me is Donna Grindle of Carden. What's happening?
You know, we're just charging through the year, trying to pretend that everything's fine. Even, just keep your head high. It's 2023. Just keep your head high. Just keep going. That's my new thing. Just keep going. Just keep going. Let that thing fall to the side. It'll leave an ugly splat, but keep going.
All right. There you go. There's your motivational speech for the day.
This is a good one.
Yeah. Speaking of keeping going, we're going to be going to the PriceSec Boot Camp coming up, March 12, 13, 14, and 15.
Yes. And this episode comes out right as we start to close in on the ending of the early bird pricing. And we had a recent surge, which was interesting. It come ebb and flow because we just kind of had it sitting out there talking about it. Now as it's getting closer, all of a sudden everybody's like, I don't want to miss the early bird.
Yeah.
It is really coming together. I'm really excited about what we're doing and everything that's going to be available. It will be so much fun. You've never had so much fun doing something so boring and hard.
Unless you've been married before.
I'm going to leave that one right where it is. It's best for both of us to not go down that path.
That's right. It's also worth reminding everybody you will get 27.6 live CCB continuing education units.
Yes, it's pre-approved.
Yep.
So 27. That's like almost 2 years worth of what you need. So it can't hurt to knock out a ton of CEUs all at one time. And we'll give you the codes and the certificates and all of that kind of stuff. And it will be invaluable investment in your time.
Yep. So check out more at PriceSecBootcamp.com. That, again, PriceSecBootcamp.com. All together.
There you go.
I still have to say that sometimes because I'm not going to mention any names, but I have known some people that put spaces in when they type it in the URL. No, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't let you do that.
I'll say, go to suchandsuch.com. They're like, is there any spaces in there? I'm like, there's never been spaces in there. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah. Moving forward.
We'll talk more about technology in a little bit because today we're going to be talking about something that's hot off the press.
It is very hot. I
Yeah.
mean, we're hearing about it everywhere we turn. And if you don't know what it is yet, it's time for you to understand and be prepared to have a discussion.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about AI and more specifically, maybe it can talk better than I can.
Mm.
We're going to be talking about ChatGPT because it's the go-to one right now, but that'll change quickly. I say by the end of the year, there'll be competitors out there and it's going to be crazy.
Oh, there's a lot happening because of the success of this thing and what we've learned that we can do already. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. So we'll talk more about that today, but I have a feeling we'll be talking about other stuff before the end of the year about this and other ones that are coming. Is it's going to be like the internet. As many great things as it created, there's going to be a slew of just train wrecks that happen.
Yep, we're already, it's already like, oh, great, you can do this, but you could also do that.
Yeah. It's going to be bad. And people are already saying, it's going to put me out of my job. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm sure the guy that made the horse carriages from years ago said the same thing when cars came around. And we managed to survive that.
Yeah. There'll be new things. You have to know what you're doing when you ask it things.
Yep.
And it's all in how you phrase it, as always, because it's still a computer.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right.
We'll get into that. But before we do, want to say thanks to everybody for listening, for sharing us out, and for helping us grow the audience. And make sure you go leave us a review. We still need those. Need some reviews.
Yep.
Help a brother out. But anyway, you can, if you want to do that on Facebook, you can go to facebook.com/helpmewithhippa. You can do it right there.
Uh-huh.
All righty. So speaking of listeners, Ken, whose last name happens to be the same as mine, whom he also points out, he's not related to me and still not related to me. So I'm glad.
The minute I saw it, I just started laughing at that. It's like, thanks for just doing that part, Ken. Ken, still not related to David.
Yeah, no, a different dog, as we say around here.
Just move
But he sends us an email, and he said he listened to the program about LastPass. Apparently, LastPass got a lot of listens on that episode because we got a lot of email about it. And Ken says that he wants to remind us that it's not owned by LogMeIn now, and there's some updated information, and it's independently owned by a private equity company.
Yeah, and he had a couple of different links for people to learn more, and that's our bad. I mean, we both knew that it was spun off into a separate entity, but where we went awry with what we were talking about, and we should have made it more clear, not just that the separate entity, but this is the piece that bothered me, is that it's supposed to be a separate entity, but if you go back into some of the announcement details, and I got a link there, that the LastPass and GoTo, which used to own them, had the breach together. And there's articles about it. It explains that there was an intrusion into the development environment as well as cloud storage environment. Cloud storage environment issue is where the vaults were that were, that's where our problem is.
Right. And
in the article, it says that the third-party cloud storage service in question is shared by GoTo and LastPass. They share it. And so that is my concern, is you're supposed to be a separate entity, but you're sharing cloud storage. And I'm wondering, we still haven't heard, who is that person? And there was one article that even said that the affiliated company's developer is the one that kind of got hacked. But I mean, that's an article. It's not been announced by anybody. They don't know those details, but they have said the CEO of GoTo did come out and say, yes, we share that with LastPass. It happened to both of us. So that, yes, they've separated, but there's still this weird mixture that's going on. And it just so happens that the data breach occurred in the area where they're still playing together in the same sandbox. So yes, Ken, you're right. And I apologize if we did not make that clear, because two things. It is important to note that they are independent, and even more so that the thing that bothers me about it is they should be independent still, but it appears they're not.
Yeah. But, in the meantime, you still have everybody screaming, run from LastPass. So
yeah. And
vet that and figure it out.
we're monitoring everything, but I mean, a change like this would be major for us, both our companies, be major changes. And, we have to stay on top of it and make decisions. Just like any other business, we're doing a risk analysis on a pretty constant basis every time something new comes out.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we want to know whether or not something has changed. And as Don and I were talking before we press record, it still doesn't change the fact that the vault's out there. So no matter what you do, whether you change or not, the vault's still out there in the condition it was in when it was stolen.
Mm-hmm. It is still a problem.
Yeah.
So the only question is, do you abandon the company that created the problem? Yes or no? And how does that impact you? So.
Yeah. And, we both know that just because a company has never announced they've had a security problem doesn't mean they don't have security problems. I mean, even this thing with LastPass, how many security issues have come up out of this that if you would ask me a year ago, do they have these problems? I'd be like, no, I ain't never heard anything about these problems. But now they're all coming out.
Uh-huh.
So it's just, somewhat the nature of things. But yeah, it's keep your ear to the ground. And you may have to do another assessment as you start learning more information. And even if you go somewhere else, you got to still do another assessment and figure that out. It's
because we're assessing the other ones and going, whoa, there's another thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Because some of the things that they do or they don't do, I'm like, man, I'm just trading problems here. So sometimes it's like, oh, it's the devil,
But to all of you who sent in some information, we greatly appreciate it. And you know who you are. We continue our conversations. And as always, keep sending in those messages, which brings us to another message.
Yeah. So this one comes from Misty.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, tell me some stuff I need to hear. So Misty says that she works as a HIPAA privacy officer at the university or at a university. And I won't mention which one. And there's so many topics. Here's what she writes. I'll just read it. There's so many topics I feel like get left out of most HIPAA training that I would love to hear you cover. Misty, that's probably true for all training except for what we put out. And so she continues, student medical records in FERPA, and especially student athletes, and how HIPAA and FERPA affects communication between the athletic trainers and providers. Thank you.
Exclamation point. Thank you.
Yeah, two thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So my first thought is, boy, FERPA and HIPAA, Misty, you don't ask for much, do you? But we're kidding. You're correct. I mean, this is where we talk about there are so many fine details behind what everybody sees as HIPAA.
Mm-hmm.
The general training for HIPAA doesn't even explain that there is a difference between FERPA and HIPAA, and the general training for HIPAA is not clear about who's a covered entity, who's a business associate, all of those tricky little things that the rest of us who manage it have to know. There's not a clear line around where HIPAA applies. Otherwise, we wouldn't hear all the HIPAA advice we hear on social media.
Yeah. And we can tell you that AI don't know either right now.
Ooh, I got to ask it that. So, but you're absolutely right. This is why we do our boot camps and we have Carton Club, because of those fine details, so that you can get that behind the scenes stuff. And if you aren't aware that there are entities that both FERPA and HIPAA apply, you should be aware, because the universities, as Misty has to battle, has a lot to worry about. And it really gets into more like student athletes. Everybody wants to know how, Stetson Bennett's ankle is, because, go Dogs. But now that he's graduated, they'll be like, we don't care. So, but again, it's the same thing. And there, it is very, very tricky about how the greater university learns things and what's allowed to say to different people, as well as the trainers and the providers trying to work together. So I'm going to see what I can come up with to kind of get into an episode. You're absolutely right. It is a very tricky connection, overlap, mixture of colors, whatever you want to call it. So we'll see what we can do. But yes, FERPA and HIPAA, it's a complex world.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So we don't have a HIPAA Say What segment, but there are a couple of things that you wanted to bring to light as far as things that are new and noteworthy. Or is it noteworthy in the news?
Notes from the news. Notes in the news. A couple of things that I just want to bring up because we've done a couple of episodes about website security recently and the importance of website security and how you don't know all the ways that they could mess up your website and your websites aren't secure because web developers aren't known for security skills. That's not their job.
Mm-hmm.
But then I saw this article that a ransomware gang has cloned a victim's website. So they made it look like, where they'll do like change one letter in the domain name so it looks like you. Then they'll steal all the images and really clone your website. So it looks like you, but it's not you. Seen it done a million times. You and I could go do it if we so desired. It's not hard to do.
I got cardingqq.com.
Yeah, I know. But it's also a nightmare when it's done and they do it so that it looks like you. And then they're doing the data leaks from that site. So it's like you're doing data leaks of your own data. And, it just, in that case, it just looks like it. But wow. I mean, think about a whole new reputational damage issue, all these kind of things. It's taking it to a new level. But then we add to it, what if if this is successful in getting money, which people aren't paying as much, which is great news, but that means they're going to get more and more tricky on backing you into a corner. And if this is very successful at that, why not steal your site and lock you out of it and do that?
Mm-hmm.
Don't wait for us. I did a presentation to a group last week, and I told them, I was like, really, I only ask you to do these things so that I don't have to tell a story about you in my next presentation when I come back. But that is, don't be the one, because I could see it happening. They take the website, lock you out of your own website, and then turn it into a data leak site.
Mm-hmm.
And it wouldn't have to happen very long. I'm sure, you could bring it down, but there's a lot of things they could do with, you look at the security on domain management and the security. It's just, it's messy. And no, it's not like me talking about it's going to give anybody an idea that ain't already out there. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's true.
And then a shout out, and we mention Marianne McGee's articles often, but this, I just had to do a shout out because the title, just for me, was Chef's Kiss. Colonoscopy prep retail website breach festered for years. And then it starts as if colonoscopies weren't invasive enough. And if you haven't had one yet, just wait. Nearly 250,000 patients who underwent an intestinal probe now must grapple with a data breach tied to a hacking incident at a third-party vendor. What have we been telling you? Third-party vendor to gastroenterologists. And this is Captify Health Online Retail. They call themselves Your Patient Advisor Online Retail. Suffered a, quote, malicious code incident that persisted for more than 3 years. Ouch.
That sounds like a pain in the butt right there.
Yuck, 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 yuck. There's just so many things. But when I read colonoscopy prep festered for years, I'm like, This is brilliant.
Yeah.
I had to do a shout for that one. That was good.
So, yeah, I wonder if she used ChatGPT to come up with that.
Now we got to try that, right?
I know. We should try it for this episode.
Well, to come up with a title. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ask it because what we're about to tell you is there's all this stuff about ChatGPT. We're going to tell you a little bit about what it is, but then I ask it what to tell you about it. And we're going to review that. So, yes, right now the working title is ChatGPT Explains Itself. We'll see if it gives us a better title. Anyway, you want to tell them what ChatGPT is all about?
Yeah. So in short, it is an AI chatbot, and it is owned by a company called OpenAI. And what you can do with it is interesting to say the least.
Oh, wow. It's overwhelming what you can do with it.
Yeah. So it kind of depends. It's kind of one of those things like, I remember when I first I had a friend actually that got an iPad when they first came out. And I remember looking at this thing going, I don't get it. Like, what am I supposed to do with this thing? It makes no sense to me. It's like a big old flipping iPhone that you can't make phone calls with. So I was like, I was very lost on the whole thing about iPads for a while. I was just like, I don't get it. You're playing Angry Birds. So what? It's just, I don't get it. Everybody's like, I need to have one. So it's a little like that if you don't know what you're getting into. But you go to this chat bot and you can ask it questions and you can tell it to give you certain responses back for things. And that's where I think the magic comes from, is when you go into it and you say, I need you to do XYZ. And it comes back and it gives you its response. So it's not like a Google search, even though I think that's what people initially do. They go in and they use it like Google. And they're like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. I'm like, no. You missed the magic.
Yeah.
do this. Like, yeah. And then they do something else and they're like, oh, wow. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's, if you treat it like a Google search, it's like, well, okay, I don't really get it. It's just another kind of search thing. But no, it's not that, because you can come in and say, for example, what we're going to do with this is we're going to feed this podcast basically the notes into it and say, give us a title for this podcast. And it'll come back and give us several options for titles. So you can do this, you can do that. I had it recently, somebody had written up a press release for my Rotary Club. A few of us and said, please review this press release. Let me know if there's any changes you need to make. I took the press release, copied it, pasted it into ChatGPT and said, rewrite this press release for me. It rewrote the entire press release, and it was much better than the original.
Yeah.
And so I just copied that, sent that over to the people that were putting the press release together, and they were like, oh, this is fabulous. And then I said, give me a press release title for this. And it gave me a title that was far better than what they had. So that's the stuff that blows your mind when you start doing stuff like that.
Well, I'm going to drive boying crazy because I still have it open where I was asking it. So then it gives me, I say, give me a title for this episode. And then, of course, it gives me the formal one, exploring the potential of ChatGPT in healthcare, opportunities, concerns, and best practices. All right.
It's not bad. It's long, but not bad.
I'm going to say, give me a funny title for this podcast.
Yeah. Or you can just say, I like that one, but shorten it. And it'll give you a shorter version.
Yeah.
Because it uses, what do they call it? Natural conversational formats.
Yeah.
And so, and
natural
it also,
language.
Yeah. There you go. Natural language. It uses that. Plus it also, as you're talking to it during the session, it remembers everything from the session you're in.
Yep.
And so when you ask it to do something, you don't have to come back and give it a whole nother sentence again. You can just pick up where you left off, just like you were having a conversation with somebody. If I were to ask Donna, give me a title, and then she gives me one, if I said to Donna, okay, give me another one, she knows that. Well, this is how it works. You can just say, okay, give me another one, and it'll do the same things. It's very fascinating.
Which is what I'm telling it. So we went from, the formal one to ChatGPT, the doctor you never knew you needed but will never forget. And then I said, okay, give me another one. ChatGPT, the AI doctor that will keep you laughing and healthy.
Okay.
So we gotta try again. Give me another one. And I could tell it, just try again. Yeah. So it'll keep trying. The AI doctor who will make you laugh and cure you at the same time, which is not a good idea.
Yeah.
It already told me that.
Yeah. Well, you do see, at least I do, some of the things when I'm playing around with it, I do start to see repetitive stuff.
Yep.
Especially when you're getting down into things that are very specific, you'll see repetition. And when I first started playing around with it, not long after it came out, and oh, by the way, it is worth noting that it took less than a week for ChatGPT to hit 1 million registered users.
Right.
Okay. Now, to put that in context, it took Facebook 3 years to get 1 million registered users. This thing did it in like 5 days.
Wow.
And they're constantly saying we're having problems with bandwidth and all that because it's been used, it's in use so much. It's crazy. But I know one thing I asked it to do a couple of weeks ago, and I sent it to you. I asked it something about HIPAA, and it came back with something that was just completely absurd.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, it completely doesn't understand HIPAA right now.
But they have it now. I mean, they're going to have a pro version and you pay like an annual fee and that gives you access to additional things. But, right now it's freely available.
Yeah.
And so don't, if you haven't tried it, first thing you want to do is, now we did do some fun things, like David had it write a hip hop song about HIPAA. And we've had some fun with those things, but go out but you need to learn how to tell it to do things. And remember, you're in an ongoing conversation. And so there are a couple of guides that I found that were really, really good that would say things like, I want you to act as a travel guide and I'm traveling to this city and I would like to visit museums, and then tell me other museums that are nearby that I would probably like to see. And so then it goes and explains all that. And, so now you're getting in a lot of detail. And then you have a conversation. You can continue to ask questions about it or add things to your itinerary. So, it's those kind of things that you can do. And it's quite freaky and exciting at the same time.
Yeah. The funny thing is that this type of AI has actually been around for a long time. It's different, obviously, than the AI that we used to play around with. But I can remember even as far back as the 80s, the late 80s, playing around with an AI program. It was called Ractor. And you can still find it. You still find it online. It's called Ractor. It was completely text-based. It remembered some stuff. Now, of course, when you play with it nowadays, you're like, okay, this is kind of crazy. Yeah,
rudimentary stuff.
Yeah, it's just like, this is not exciting at all. But when it's 1987 and you're doing this, you're like, this is freaking crazy. You get back on there on your IBM. I don't even think we had hard drives back then yet in the computers. But you get on your IBM and you pull this thing up and it says, "Are you David Sims from Lancaster that I talked to yesterday?" And you're like, what?
Now everything knows that, but back then, no.
Yeah. And if you say no, then it might ask you, well, are you somebody else that it had talked to? Because it did keep a short, kind of rolling database of information, but it was just was pretty fascinating what it did. And there's also other applications, even through OpenAI, which is the company that puts out ChatGPT. They have one that will create digital artwork and digital images based on what you ask it to do, which, again, looking at it now, some of it's like really good and some of it's really bad.
Yes. Because we've played with both.
Yeah. But it's again, very interesting because it's not like a search engine. It's not going out and looking for images that are out there. It's generating, it's creating an image as you ask for it that it doesn't exist anywhere else. It's very, very fascinating what it does.
And so you can imagine all the different applications that are out there. And there's a museum talking about they have a chatbot that lets you talk to historical figures like Shakespeare and Andy Warhol. Einstein, we could ask some questions, but I don't know that's cool. And it lets you carry on a natural conversation. But then there's an article that when I read it, I'm like, oh my, I'm going to need to do that one and that one. And you and I have used it to write CSS code. Well, that's not code, but PHP code and some other things. So that's really cool to do. And if you're not already doing these 10 productivity hacks, you're definitely missing out, is an Inc.com article. I'm linking to it. I mean, there are so many articles telling you what to do.
Mm-hmm. I've had it write emails for me.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, I had to write a text message. I had somebody send out a text message the other day and they were like, my husband is out of the hospital, but we found out that his problem is bigger than we thought it was. And I'm leaving out different details. But anyway, I'm like, typically I'm sitting there going, well, how do I respond to this? Like,
Yeah.
I want to be mindful of the fact that they just got some bad news, but it's just stuff like that. Some people have a hard time understanding how to respond to it. And so I was like, well, this is an interesting test. And so I took the actual text message they sent and I plugged it into ChatGPT and I said, a thoughtful response for this text message. And it did. It was really good. I wouldn't tell my friend that I did that, but and I did another one too, where I said, give me a response to this email. And I just put the previous email body in there. And it's like, give me a response I can send. And it typed out the entire response to the person. And I was like, this is really good.
And we're not talking like 30 minutes later either.
No.
You wait a couple of seconds and then.
Yeah. Well, the interesting part is, and I heard somebody else say this, so I'm stealing it from somebody, but they said that the AI is going to be one of these things that changes rapidly. And it's going to get to the point where it's so good at what it does that when you get like on a chat with somebody from a website because you need to return a product or whatever, that you're going to be glad you're not dealing with a human.
Yeah.
You're going to can I speak to the AI? Because I need somebody that can give me the answers I want. They're not passing me up to the next level or let me get back to you in a week or whatever. Like it's that good. So it's going to be
not going to get emotional. It's not going to, it's just going to do it.
You're going to cuss it out and be like, I'm sorry you feel that way.
So, but here's some other things though. You can tell we're having fun with it, but there's several articles, and just today, Microsoft announces they're going to invest. Not they're buying them. It says they're going to invest in OpenAI $10 billion.
That's
investment.
Crazy. That's crazy. That should tell you exactly what they see in this. Mm-hmm. And Google's got one they're coming out with. They're kind of in panic mode right now because they weren't first to market. But they've been working on one for a while, and now they've really started speaking. It's funny as as I say Google, my little Google thing across the room goes, I didn't understand you. But yeah,
More
Google's
AI.
yeah. But they're kind of in panic mode right now, trying to get theirs to market. I expect we'll see that this year. They'll
yeah.
release theirs probably within the first half of the year, I would expect, but definitely by the end of the year.
Well,
And so
especially with this Microsoft investment, I mean, they got to make themselves maintain relevancy.
Yeah. So you'll start to see maybe 2023 will be the year of the battle bots.
I do love watching battle bots, though.
Yeah. So we could see an AI battle, happen this year about, who's going to be the one.
Yeah. Well, and it'll be a while before that all works out because there's just so much. And so the other thing is another article that says health entities should vet risk of ChatGPT use. That came right after HC3, which is the cybersecurity HHS team that does analysis of what's going on out there, posted the artificial intelligence and its current potential to aid in malware development. Because again, all the things that we're talking about, they already know that folks that are writing malware are using the AI to write it.
Yeah. So we've been talking about all the fun stuff that it can do and the positive impacts it can have on your life and making things easier. However,
yeah,
it's going to make your life not so good when the bad guys get a hold of it.
So here we go. We're gonna go now. The rest of this is going to be what ChatGPT, what I ask it, and then David can play the AI. So it'll sound like Max Headroom or something. But I'm going to give you the here's the question I ask it, and its answers pasted straight into our notes. And this is it. Here we go. Are you ready, David?
I am ready.
Okay.
I am ready.
It doesn't take much for us, does it? All right. I am going to record a podcast episode about ChatGPT and how it could be used in a healthcare setting. What are the top 3 things I should include about you in healthcare applications? Also, what concerns should we have about the accuracy of information you provide to healthcare clinicians?
That's a tough one. So it responded, one important thing to mention about using ChatGPT in healthcare setting is its ability to generate human-like responses, which can be useful for creating simulated patient interactions for training and or research purposes, which I thought was interesting. I was like, training. Another potential application for ChatGPT in healthcare is its ability to assist with data entry and documentation tasks, which can help reduce the workload of healthcare providers and improve efficiency. Additionally, ChatGPT's ability to understand and respond to natural language inputs can make it a useful tool for creating chatbots, which can assist patients with finding information and answering questions. Regarding concerns about the accuracy of information provided by ChatGPT, it's important to note that the model is only as accurate as the data it was trained on. It may not be able to provide accurate or reliable information about certain rare or complex medical conditions. Additionally, it's important to use caution when interpreting the model's responses and consider the limitations of the data that it was trained on. It is always recommended to consult a qualified medical professional for any medical questions or concerns. Wow.
And it was a matter of seconds to spit that thing out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I said, are there any healthcare privacy and security concerns if a clinician uses you to provide some healthcare information?
Yes, there are privacy and security concerns that should be considered when using a language model like ChatGPT in a healthcare setting. Number one concern is that the model may not be able to fully understand and adhere to healthcare privacy regulations such as HIPAA. Spelled accurately, by the way. Number 2, another concern is that the model's responses may contain sensitive or protected health information, PHI. And it is important to have proper protocols in place to protect and secure this data. Even it knows that. Number 3, additionally, if the model is integrated into a clinical workflow or system, there is a risk of unauthorized access to PHI or other sensitive information. It's important to have appropriate access controls and authentication mechanisms in place to prevent this. To mitigate these concerns, it is important to conduct a thorough risk assessment and implement appropriate controls such as encryption, access controls, and monitoring to protect patient data. This blows my mind. It is also important to train the model on data that has been properly de-identified in compliance with regulations and guidelines, and to validate the model's output before it is used in a clinical setting.
Wow. So then I said, what are the 3 most important steps to include in a risk assessment that you just mentioned?
Number 1, data analysis. A thorough analysis of the data used to train the model and the data that the model will be processing in a healthcare setting should be conducted. This includes understanding the types of data that will be used, where it came from, and how it will be stored and processed. This analysis will help identify any potential risk or vulnerabilities and provide a foundation for the risk assessment. Number 2, threat identification. Identify the potential threats, risks, and vulnerabilities that could compromise patient privacy or security. This includes identifying the threat actors, their motivations, and the likelihood of them exploiting a vulnerability. And number 3, control implementation and validation. Based on the analysis and threat identification, implementation controls and procedures to mitigate identified risk and vulnerabilities. This includes access controls, encryption, monitoring, and incident response procedures. Once controls are implemented, it's important to validate that these are working as intended and that they are sufficient to protect patient data. This may involve regular testing and monitoring of the system, conducting penetration testing, and vulnerability assessments. It's also worth mentioning that it's important to keep the risk assessment up to date, as the technology, data, and regulations can change over time.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, you don't need us anymore.
It tells you exactly what to do. At that point, I'm like, I mean, you could go down a ton of questions like, what kind of threats should I consider? And I mean, there's a ton of things I really want to keep asking it, but at what point do we say, oh, that's enough?
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing though, when you start talking about HIPAA and your privacy and security program, you and I both know it's not a lack of information that trips people up. It's the amount of work involved to make it happen.
Yeah.
So if this can get to the point where it reduces that amount of work, that's going to be where the value is.
Well, and so, some of those things, as we move forward, as it told us, it could create documentation efficiencies and things like that. So it's telling us what it can do and what you should do with it.
Yeah. I mean, and this is just the beta release that they're putting out there. I mean, that's what I think maybe even blows my mind more than the rest of it. It's like, this is not the paid version, final, go to market version of it. It's just, it's really good.
Yeah. For the most part, it's telling you the things to worry about. It can be used inappropriately, and the information is only as good as the data it was trained on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So one of the things that I've read for some time about the concerns of bringing AI into healthcare is not only, the potential for security and privacy issues. Of course, those are the ones we mostly focus on here. But also things like how many of the patients that it was trained to treat were my age, with my history, with all of the details about me.
Mm-hmm.
that makes me unique, because we're each unique. So it can't have all the information. We can't make an assumption that it knows everything.
Yeah. There's several things I'm concerned with. One of which, when you're talking about communication, we know that the vast majority of communication is nonverbal. It's body language and things like that you pick up on. And until AI can see you and know how to pick up on that, which is in itself a challenge, then there's a large part of communication that's going to always be missed. The other thing that concerns me is the over-reliance on AI, that you'll start to see people getting into the point where they're like, as long as I can ask AI or I can get AI to do it, I don't need to know it, or I don't need to know how to do it. And so you could start seeing a rapid digression of people's abilities and skills because they're too reliant on AI.
Well, that's like, you go to a store and, it's weird, but if you use cash.
What is that?
and the computers are down, they don't know how much change to give you.
Oh, I know. Isn't that crazy?
Because they've never gotten used to doing math in their head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Same kind of scenario. So it's great, but we need to deal with it now, not later. Start to build these things into, the way we look at it from the beginning, instead of, oh, I never have to do math in my head again, which is what calculator. I never have to do. Once they let me have one, I was so excited. And I like doing math,
So here's something funny. When I was coming up through school, I was one of these guys that would say something like, "I'll just use a calculator."
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, this teacher told me, she's like, "Well, you're not going to be walking around with a calculator in your pocket all the time." And I'm thinking, yes, I do. 30 years later, I'm laughing because I actually do carry around a calculator everywhere I go.
Yeah, but it took a while to get there.
It's on my phone. So yeah, it's crazy, what you're going to be able to do. But also, like we said in the beginning, for every good thing it brings to the table, there's the equal and opposite reaction. There's a bad thing that's going to come out of it too. And so both of those will have to be assessed and dealt with. And
there's no simple answers. So, well, we just don't let them get to it is not an answer. That won't work.
And the other thing too is you'll start seeing this type of technology on the back end tied into applications and stuff. And you'll say, "Oh, I don't use any AI." Yeah, you do.
You just don't know.
You just don't realize it. It's baked into the back end of it.
Yeah, well, all of a sudden your computer slowed down. And it's because your AI is fighting the criminal's AI malware. They're having a fight on your computer, and you never knew it until it started slowing things down. They've been fighting for days.
Yeah. I mean, even the tools we use now, the security tools, for the longest time, I say longest time, like a couple of years now or so, they tout that they are AI driven security tools. And so they've been using it in this arena for a while. This is going to only make it better, but it also makes the criminals better as well. So interesting.
So we get back to everybody's on the privacy and security team.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to stay because, well, we first got to get there, which is, a big theme about everything that we do. And it's a big point that we go through in the PriceSec Bootcamp is everybody has to be on the team.
Yep. That is true. And it's going to be even more true the further we go. It's not going to turn around and go the opposite direction.
Yeah, there's no more, I don't have to worry about securing it. IT does that. Nope.
Yeah, because imagine that somebody in your organization can come up to the AI thing and say, "Please analyze my organization and tell me how I can circumvent the security." And it goes, "Okay."
There's where it gets into telling you should teach me not to answer certain questions without access authority.
Yeah. And that's going to be a thing. And you and I are going to be sitting here in a few years from now going, yeah. Have you locked down the permissions of your AI so that people can't ask those types of questions?
Yep.
It's going to be a thing. I mean, professors are already freaking out about it because it can write research papers that are phenomenal.
Well, yeah, apparently they did. I saw an article that like a bunch of the students in Stanford used it for their final exams. And everybody's like, wait, what? We didn't know it was going to happen that quick.
Yeah. It's like, do you give them a bad grade or do you give them a good grade for being, ingenious?
Yeah, there's always that, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you when I was coming up, you got a bad grade because nobody ever credited me for how ingenious I was at circumventing things.
Yeah, and things haven't changed a lot for you, have they?
No. But anyway.
Yeah.
So there you go. We'll change the title potentially if we like it. We'll ask it a few more times, but anyway, go out there and try it out while it's free. See what it's all about, and be careful. The robots are coming.
Oh yeah, the scary dog gun those are terrifying.
And if you haven't seen the latest Boston Dynamics robot demonstration video, you got to go check it out because, again, mind-blowing. Used to you saw the robot walking around. It was kind of had the things attached to it so it wouldn't fall over, in its infancies. And of course, you've probably seen the videos where they're pushing it and it doesn't fall. Seen that one. Yeah. The newest one, shouldn't give it away, but I will. The newest one does gymnastics. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's all I'll say.
I watched it and I'm like, did it just... Oh, yeah, it did.
Yeah, it did a dismount. What was that? What in the world? The other thing, too, is that it walked across a board, and I don't know how many people caught it, but it was just a regular shelving board, 4-foot-long shelving board, which tells me this thing is very light.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy what that's going to turn into in the coming years as well. Sure, there's lots of military applications, but there will also be a lot of factory applications as well for what it can do.
Oh, too many things.
Yeah. But go check that out. And yeah, some of this will worry some people to death. Some of them will be like us and nerd out all over it. But yeah, go check it out. Any closing words, Donna?
Is now.
You ask ChatGPT, does it have any closing words for our podcast?
Well, now I gotta find it and type. It came up with the closing thoughts.
All right, what's the closing thoughts, Don?
It's not finished yet.
Oh.
It's in closing. It says, there we go.
Okay, so it's got, in conclusion, while ChatGPT has the potential to revolutionize the healthcare industry by assisting with tasks such as data entry, patient interactions, and information retrieval, it is important to keep in mind the potential privacy and security risks that come with this technology. Implementing best practices, conducting thorough risk assessments, and validating the system's controls are key to ensuring patient data is protected. Additionally, it is important to keep in mind that the model's responses should be used as a tool and not a definitive answer, and to consult a qualified medical professional for any medical questions or concerns. Thank you for listening.
That's kind of what we kind of rambled through, but it was much more concise.
It was much more concise. Yeah. I mean, there you go, folks. I mean, if you haven't used it yet, I know a lot of tech people listen to this podcast and they're probably already all over it. But if you haven't, I mean, that's just a example of what it can do, man. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. So that's our show for today. Thanks for listening. Remember to share us out, follow us, help us spread the word, and leave the review. Don't make me have to go to ChatGPT and ask for reviews.
You could go to ChatGPT and ask, how do I give a great review of a funny HIPAA podcast? We'll have to do that after this.
Yeah, and it'll give you what to say, or you just copy and paste. So there you go. I'm not even asking for a review, just copy paste. That's all I'm asking. All right, we will catch you next week. Remember that HIPAA is not about compliance. It is about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.